organization is dying and it's a useless organization. And it only took Donald Trump to remind all of this organization is dying and it's a useless organization. And it only took Donald Trump to remind all of this organization is dying and it's a useless organization. And it only took Donald Trump to remind all of this organization is dying and it's a useless organization. And it only took Donald Trump to remind all of
Right, so picture this. It's the 22nd of May, 2025. Over in the grand, slightly too gold Oval Office, President Donald Trump is having a chinwag with South Africa's own President Cyril Ramaphosa. You'd think, with all the pressing global issues, they'd be thrashing out some serious world-saving plans. But according to one Julius Malema, leader of the economic freedom fighters, it was less of a high-stakes diplomatic summit and more of a gossip session among older men in Washington. Malema, never one to mince his words or shy away from a bit of drama, didn't wait for the official communiques or the carefully worded press releases. Oh no, he took to X, formerly known as Twitter because of course he did, to deliver his immediate unfiltered verdict. He painted a picture not of two world leaders tackling the nitty-gritty of international relations, but of a rather pointless get-together. The suggestion was clear. Whatever was discussed, it certainly wasn't going to solve South Africa's problems. Or indeed anyone else's in his estimation. The very idea that this meeting could yield anything substantial for South Africa seemed to be anathema to Malema. So, to dismiss the encounter as mere gossip is classic Malema, a swift, cutting remark designed to undermine the perceived importance of the event, and by extension the participants. It's a power play, delivered with the casual disdain of someone who believes he sees through the charade of international diplomacy. One of the most explosive topics reportedly broached in that Washington meeting, and one that consistently ignites fierce debate, is the claim of a white genocide in South Africa. Now, this is a narrative that has been amplified in certain international circles, often fueled by misinformation and deeply emotive imagery. According to reports, President Trump, never one to shy away from controversial topics, brought this up with President Ramaphosa, allegedly even showing a misleading video clip as supposed evidence. For Julius Malema, however, this entire premise is not just false, but a dangerous distraction, a phantom menace conjured to obscure real issues and sow division. Malema's response, as detailed in the aftermath of the Oval Office discussions, was unequivocal. There is simply no substantial intelligence evidence to support claims of a white genocide in South Africa. He has consistently argued that crime in South Africa, while tragically high, affects all communities, and that to frame farm attacks, for instance, solely as racially motivated killings of white farmers is a gross misrepresentation. He views the white genocide claim as a politically motivated tool, often wielded by those who wish to resist land reform and maintain the economic status quo. For Julius Malema, President Ramaphosa's conduct during that Washington meeting was not just a matter of diplomatic style. It was perceived as a profound failure of leadership, a moment where the president allegedly faltered in his duty to defend South Africa. The accusation from the EFF leader was stark. Ramaphosa displayed cowardice by not robustly challenging President Trump's assertions, particularly those concerning the white genocide narrative and the nature of land reform in the country. Malema's critique painted a picture of a South African head of state who, when confronted with provocative claims, failed to stand firm for his nation's dignity and truth. Malema asserted with his characteristic confidence that had he been present in that Oval Office encounter, President Trump would not have dared to behave in such a disrespectful manner. He suggested that Ramaphosa should have immediately and forcefully corrected Trump's misinterpretations, clarifying that farmers in South Africa are not a monolithic white group, and that the notion of a white genocide is a baseless, harmful fabrication. The implication was that Ramaphosa's more composed, reconciliatory approach was in fact a sign of weakness. The core of Malema's criticism revolved around the perceived abdication of responsibility to protect South Africa's sovereignty and its constitution. Among the various points of contention arising from the Trump-Ramaphosa meeting, the controversial chant "Kill the Boer" or "Shoot the Boer" took center stage, particularly with Trump reportedly playing a video montage of Malema leading the chant. This song, with its deeply divisive historical connotations, has long been a flashpoint in South African discourse. However, Julius Malema's stance on the matter is resolute, and importantly, he often highlights its legal standing within South Africa. He consistently points out that the chant has been subject to judicial scrutiny and has been deemed political rhetoric by a court, with further emphasis that the Constitutional Court itself has effectively approved its use in certain contexts. Malema's defense of the chant is rooted in the argument that it is not a literal call to violence against white Afrikaans-speaking farmers, but rather a symbolic expression against a system, the system of oppression and land dispossession historically associated with the term Boer in the context of apartheid. He would argue that the courts have understood this nuance, recognizing it as a form of political expression, however uncomfortable it may make some people feel. The Oval Office meeting, as described in various reports and through Malema's incensed reaction, seems to have been less a diplomatic exchange and more a stage for President Trump's characteristic brand of confrontational politics. The reported playing of a video montage featuring Julius Malema chanting "Kill the Boer" was a deliberate theatrical move. Add to this a dossier on Malema singing "Shoot the Boer," and it becomes clear that this was a calculated effort to put President Ramaphosa on the defensive and to cast Malema and his EFF party as villains in a narrative of racial strife and violence against white South Africans. Trump didn't stop at visual aids. He reportedly used the video as a springboard to directly accuse Malema and the EFF of racism and violence. He questioned President Ramaphosa about the chant and, significantly, called for Malema's arrest. This direct call for the arrest of a prominent opposition leader in another sovereign nation is a highly unusual, if not unprecedented, step in diplomatic relations. For Malema, this was not just an attack on him personally, but an attack on the democratic processes and legal sovereignty of South Africa. In the face of what he perceived as a direct assault on his character and his political movement, orchestrated from the highest office in the United States, Julius Malema's response was characteristically defiant and bold. He didn't just refute the accusations, he turned the tables, suggesting that President Trump's aggressive posture was only possible because of President Ramaphosa's perceived meekness. Malema famously asserted that Trump would not have behaved so disrespectfully, would not have dared to make such inflammatory statements had he, Julius Malema, been the one representing South Africa in that Oval Office meeting. This is quintessential juju projecting an image of unshakable strength and fearlessness. This claim Trump wouldn't dare is more than just bravado. It's a carefully crafted piece of political theater in itself, designed to contrast his own combative style with Ramaphosa's more measured diplomatic approach. Malema positions himself as the leader who would not only stand up to international bullies, but would command their respect, or at least their caution. He implies that his very presence would have altered the dynamics of the meeting, preventing Trump from launching into his tirade of accusations about white genocide or the "Kill the Boer" chant. A central pillar of Julius Malema's political ideology, and a recurring theme in his response to the Trump-Ramaphosa meeting, is the fight against imperialism. He consistently frames global political dynamics as a struggle between oppressed nations and powerful imperialist forces seeking to maintain their dominance and exploit resources. In this worldview, the EFF is not just a South African political party, it is a vanguard in this global anti-imperialist struggle. Following the Washington encounter, Malema was quick to declare that the EFF is the only organization hated by imperialists, a bold claim that positions his party as uniquely threatening to the established global order. This assertion serves multiple purposes. Firstly, it elevates the EFF's significance beyond its domestic electoral performance, casting it as a player of international consequence. If global imperialists, a term he often uses to refer to Western powers, particularly the United States, despise the EFF, it must be because the EFF poses a genuine threat to their interests. This narrative appeals to a sense of revolutionary pride among his followers and attempts to galvanize support against a common external enemy. Beyond the specifics of the "Kill the Boer" chant or the white genocide narrative, Julius Malema's critique of President Ramaphosa's performance in Washington centered on a fundamental overarching responsibility, the defense of the South African Constitution and the nation's sovereignty. For Malema, these are not abstract concepts but sacred trusts, and he accused Ramaphosa of failing to uphold them in the face of President Trump's onslaught. This perceived lapse, in Malema's view, was a profound dereliction of duty, a moment where the nation's highest representative did not adequately shield its founding principles from external attack or misrepresentation. Malema argues that the South African Constitution, celebrated globally for its progressive and inclusive nature, provides all the necessary ammunition to counter the kind of narratives Trump was allegedly peddling. It enshrines principles of non-racialism, equality, and dignity, and it outlines a framework for addressing historical injustices, including land reform, in a lawful and orderly manner. Ramaphosa, according to Malema, should have robustly used this constitutional framework to dismantle Trump's arguments point by point, asserting South Africa's commitment to its own democratic processes and its right to determine its own future, free from ill-informed external judgment. In the final analysis, Julius Malema's fiery response to the Trump-Ramaphosa meeting was far more than a collection of criticisms. It was a dramatic reaffirmation of his political identity and a clarion call for a particular vision of South Africa. His stance was one of unflinching resolve, a refusal to be cowed by international pressure or to allow what he considers to be false narratives about his country and his party to go unchallenged. He presented himself, once again, as the indomitable spirit of resistance, the voice that will speak truth to power, no matter how powerful that power may seem or how grand the stage upon which it performs. His dramatic pronouncements, that Trump wouldn't dare confront him, that the EFF is the sole target of imperialists, that Ramaphosa failed to defend the nation, are all part of a carefully constructed persona. This is the persona of a leader who is not afraid to be controversial, who thrives on confrontation if he believes it serves a higher purpose of defending South Africa's sovereignty and dignity. It's a performance, yes, but one that resonates deeply with a segment of the South African population that feels marginalized, unheard, and impatient for radical change. They see in Malema a champion who is unafraid to articulate their frustrations and aspirations. The entire episode, from the Oval Office gossip session to Malema's scathing ex-posts and subsequent statements, highlights the deep ideological divides within South African politics and the complex way in which domestic issues intersect with international